A few weeks ago, I was scrolling through Instagram, and for whatever reason, the algorithm showed me a running video. Not my usual fare. It was a middle school race being filmed by a coach who was cheering on a runner solidly in the middle of the pack. The girl began the race with an even, steady pace, loping along as other runners took off in front of her. "That's right," the coach said, "fast and relaxed." Just like that, fast and relaxed. The girl looked like an average runner rounding the first bend of the track. But around the second bend, the coach encouraged her to speed up, and she turned up her power so that her easy, loping stride started passing folks. On the third bend, the coach yelled for her to put it all in, to pull back the stops and pour her energy into the last leg. And suddenly this girl was at top speed, easily passing every single other runner in the race and smoking her way to the finish line, meters ahead of every other runner. And she made it look easy. In running, race strategy depends on how long the race is. Runners deliberately pace themselves. They have periods when they run fast and relaxed, periods when they put their power into their legs and start to speed up, and then some periods where they throw all their energy in and run as fast as they can. This run that we're in right now, it's a long one. And we need to pace ourselves in order to keep our energy up. Right now, we're in the part of the race where we need to run fast and relaxed. Fast and relaxed. Easy, loping strides that draw on our strengths but don't burn us out. We need to keep our hope focused. Now, that can be a hard thing to do when so many systems are designed to tense us up, because those systems capitalize on our fear. People make money and derive power and increase their own control from our collective fear. Which means part of our struggle is simply to ground our nervous systems, to breathe, to return to our spiritual practices and to our communities of accountability and practice and beloveds in order to feel safety and healing connection and strength in our bodies and spirits. Because we are strong, we are powerful together, and we are part of a larger movement resisting fascism, resisting white nationalism and white Christian nationalism. And the truth is that there are more of us than there are of the people who want to dominate us. There are more people dwelling in love and in hope and in interconnection, more people who care about their fellow human beings, and more people who care deeply about this earth. We are part of a much, much larger movement of people who are holding and creating a vision of beloved community in which each and every human being is sacred, and our ways of living support one another in mutual and collective flourishing. This vision of hope and mutual flourishing is a sacred jewel in our spirits that we need to protect and hold holy as we run this race. The poet Aurora Levins Morales writes, "Imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is your power. Imagine winning, every detail of winning, the exact smell of the summer streets in which no one has been shot. The muscles you have never unclenched from worry gone soft as newborn skin, the sparkling taste of food when you know that no one on earth is hungry, that the poor are fed, that the old man under the bridge and the woman wrapping herself in a thin sheet in the back seat of a car and the children who suck on stones now nest under a flock of roofs that keep multiplying their shelter. Lean with all your being towards that day when the poor of the world shake down a rain of good fortune out of the heavy clouds and justice rolls down like waters." The vision, that sacred vision, the vision of the world in which we win, it is still possible, and we are part of bringing that world into being. That vision, it gives us power, and it sustains us in purpose and strength with its why. The world in which we win is not only a vision, though, not just something out at the edge of the horizon that we can imagine. It is also right here, right now, living in all of the microcosms of love that we both witness and create. It is alive right now, today, in the First Church members who showed up last weekend at a moment's notice to help with the We All Belong rally because First Church member Pete Konechny put out the call that some of our volunteers can't show up, and people just came with 12 hours notice. That vision of love, that microcosm of love is alive today in the people who showed up on Monday, despite all of the fear of white Christian nationalist violence and the dystopian Project 2025, despite the 90-degree heat. People showed up and said, we have a different vision of how the world can be. And it's not just microcosms of love that show up in under threat politics. It's also alive on the day-to-day basis in the ways that we care for one another. Here at church, our pastoral care associates are living that vision every time they make a phone call to somebody who is sick or grieving, somebody whose mother just died. People live the vision of mutual care and support and flourishing every day in small ways, and we need to pay attention to those microcosms of love and then breathe life into them and make them bigger. Stories of supremacy. Stories of dominance, stories of some people belonging more or deserving more than other people. Those kinds of stories, they harm our society. They harm our very souls. Those kinds of stories, those ideas, those ways of being, they create obstacles to belonging. They create obstacles to relationship, like in Don's story. But not only that, on a larger scale, they oppress entire groups of people. They remove access to resources, from food and water to healthcare to dignity to freedom. Because this is not a natural way of being, supremacy systems have to maintain themselves through violence. They're deadly. Their logic sees human beings as disposable rather than holy, as objects to be controlled rather than sacred beloveds. This week, as Black and brown communities warned of the danger of more police gathering in Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention, a Black man was shot and killed by out-of-town police here for the RNC. On Tuesday, July 16th, Sam Sharp was killed by Ohio police within seconds of them seeing him arguing with another community member in a nearby park. The Sunday before that shooting, on July 14th, as our city was preparing for the arrival of the RNC, the Milwaukee community organization Ubuntu wrote, "The Ubuntu team is acutely aware of how more police presence increases the likelihood of violence against Black people, especially when that same police force is providing services for public figures who see Black people through the lens of criminality." After Sam Sharp's death, Ubuntu wrote, "The unnecessary and tragic death of Sam Sharp at the hands of police during the RNC in Milwaukee is a grim reminder of the pervasive system of surveillance and control that Black people in the U.S. endure." In an article referenced by Ubuntu, Joy James and João Castro Vargas asked the question, what happens when instead of becoming enraged and shocked every time a Black person is killed in the United States, what happens if we recognize Black death as a predictable and constitutive aspect of the current system? It's an unsettling question. What happens to both our understanding of what is right now, what we're living in, and our understanding of what to do when we recognize that these tragedies are built in to the way the current system works? I remember how disturbed I was when I first learned that when developers are building new skyscrapers, in the financing process, they factor in the cost of compensating the families of workers who will die during the construction process. Instead of changing building methods or safety standards or the size of the building, they simply factor in worker death compensation into the financing process. What happens if we see through the lens that Black death is built into the process of increased policing, into the process of the current U.S. justice system, into the process of bringing the RNC to Milwaukee? On the other side of that unsettling question is another question. What happens if we imagine a world? What happens if we are part of building a world in which the systems that sustain life do not include death built into them? What if we collectively agreed that Black death was not an acceptable result of holding the RNC in Milwaukee? What if worker death was not an acceptable result of building a skyscraper? What if women's death was not an acceptable result of the state control of reproduction? What if our systems, the systems that we live by and through, the systems that are supposed to sustain life, were designed to sustain life and prioritize people instead of profit or power? What if our living systems operated not by an understanding of us, human beings, as inputs, variables, resources, but rather as unique, sacred, irreplaceable human beings? Last weekend, I gathered with clergy and religious leaders from Catholic, Lutheran, Baptist, Jewish, Muslim, evangelical, and of course, Unitarian Universalist faith traditions to proclaim that we all belong. We all belong in this city, in this country. We all belong in the embrace of the holy and the whole. The idea that we all belong in the embrace of the holy and the whole was originally a Universalist faith claim, as our denomination's ancestors came to understand that no one could ever be outside the sacred circle of belonging, because the great love that holds us all is bigger and it's more powerful than any individual action we might take to remove ourselves from love, and that love calls us back in again and again into the circle of belonging. In the space of the We All Belong campaign, led by our local Milwaukee inner city congregations, Allied for Hope, Micah, I see our religious siblings sharing this theology that we all belong, as we together resist the dominance theology of white Christian nationalism that is unfortunately gaining power in this country. On Sunday of last week, July 14th, hundreds of people cheered messages of hope from all of these different faith traditions, chanting, "We all belong," in response to ideas from the Quran, from the Torah, from the Bible, from our own tradition of reading the holy through the text of this world. Each of us offered a different blooming flower of hope, lilies or daisies or king sugar bush, but they were all entangled together in a network of irrevocable and gorgeous mutuality. The vision that we all belong and the living systems that sustain us will make it so exists in moments, in microcosms of love today. My friend runs a Y camp for kids, where her job is about holding space for young people to laugh and play and learn and connect. As she made her way through this past week, wondering what we are all doing and why, she remembered a story from a colleague of hers who runs a Y camp in the Ukraine. The kids are suffering, of course, and also they're still kids. They need to play and laugh and jump and dance and connect with other children. So one day at this camp in the Ukraine, the bomb siren goes off, and the camp director gathered all the kids together into the bomb shelter, which they are horrifyingly used to at this point. But on this trip downstairs into the concrete shelter, the adults brought a bunch of glow sticks. And they turned on some music, and the kids had a dance party. In the bomb shelter, neon orange and purple and green, bouncing to the movement of joy, bursting through the cracks of all the suffering. Our sacred task is to find and tell stories of and celebrate and expand those moments of irrepressible joy and hope and love and connection. Those moments where the human spirit is unbreakable and where our love is bigger than our fear and where our commitment to life and to joy and to each other wins. The folks who are out there gunning for a supremacist vision of suppression and control, sure, they might have more money. And they might even have more violence than we do. But we have more life and love and hope and joy and people power than they do. The struggle has always been thus. And it is simply right now, in this moment, our leg of the race. Just like millions of people before us have lived through wars and fascism and apartheid and slavery, our generation will also live and love through the suffering of this moment. So let us remember to find the moments of joy and connection and love and expand them. Let us remember to dance and to celebrate and to gather together with friends, to get together with people who are different from us and celebrate the difference. May we remember to practice pluralism, practice our spirituality, practice mutual aid, practice caring for one another, and building life-sustaining systems outside the threats of the kyriarchy. The poet says, weave real connections, create real nodes, build real houses. May we keep building our power, making more of those microcosms of the world that we dream about, and then sew them together, luring more and more people in with the deliciousness of connection and hope and joy and love. For indeed, after the long season of tending and growth, the harvest, it does come. Amen.